Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. Today I've got with me co-host Todd Chapman and special guest David Gallagher. David is the principal of Spiritus Business Advisors, a consultancy focused on helping service businesses primarily in the green and snow industries to create scalable, sustainable, and profitable businesses driven by proven structure and process. David has over 30 years of experience in the green and snow industries as a leader, owner, and coach. He's a passionate Christian, father, outdoorsman, and business leader who is always looking for an opportunity to share his blessing with others. Good morning, David.
Good morning. Nice to be with you guys this morning.
I nailed that, didn't I?
You did. It was perfect.
It was a perfect bio read. You know, it's not always a perfect bio read for me. So, oh, you've heard some of my faux pas?
No, I struggle with the same thing myself. I can tell you, responsive reading in church in the morning, sometimes singing hymns, right? I put all kinds of words in there that aren't on the written page. It's great.
Well, that's good. So at least we've got that in common. And listen, sure. I love the passionate piece. And we were at the leadership conference in
Ponte Verde Beach, Florida.
Ponte Verde Beach, Florida. Thank you. I appreciate the recall. Sure. And the CIMA Foundation was doing donations, and you dropped a large donation. I think it was $10K, wasn't it?
Over 2 years. Yeah. Yeah. So, 5 years, $5K a year for 2 years. Yeah.
So awesome. You're an awesome giver, a big part of snow, a big part of green. What drives that? What drives the philanthropy?
We've spent, a lot of years as many people do, being less blessed financially, right, than we felt we should be, right, or wanted to be. And as time has gone on, and I at least want to believe, right, that I've evolved as a Christian and look for opportunities to use the blessings that we're given. We've become more blessed financially, right? It's the old adage that you can't outgive God, right?
Yep.
And I know you understand that yourself. And we've come to the point in our lives where we're more blessed than we deserve, and we feel it's our responsibility to use those blessings to help organizations like CIMA, to help organizations like our church and a few of the other nonprofits that help those that have less, that are less fortunate than we are. In the course of their lives, right? I mean, that's part of what drives me professionally too, right? Todd and I were talking briefly before, you joined us here to kick things off, and I spent 30 plus years, right, according to the bio, in the industries, and some of that period of time, 2/3 of it has been right as an employee of some sort of contracting business, and the 12 years or 15 years worth of time that I've spent as a coach and a consultant are really more rewarding for me than delivering service to a client, right? That's paying for a service delivered, because I get the opportunity to help multitudes of people from, line level employees all the way up to business owners and leaders, just recognize who they are and what they have to offer. So it's part of what God's made me to be, right? He wants me, as far as I read it, right, or hear it in his voice, to give back the knowledge and the resources that I've been given in order to help other people gain greater knowledge and discernment and resources, whatever comes with that. So
I love that, man. I think that's I think that's fantastic. Just for our listening audience, there is a slight glitch that's coming up about every 2 minutes where there's just a little pause. That is part of the entrepreneurial journey and going live. And the truth of the matter is that sometimes we have glitches in our business. Sometimes little things come up that we've got to work through and that we've got to fight through, and that can be slightly annoying. So please don't be slightly annoyed if there's a little glitch on the call. Please, understand it's live and we do our best with internet connection, and we always work to have the highest level of internet connection. And one of the things I think about in regard to the glitch is, I might wake up this morning and I might have a little glitch on a project. I might not have the right landscape bed serviced and a client might be upset. I might, miss a loading dock, when we're plowing snow. These are little glitches that happen. I might not get my insurance renewed on time. I might forget to get my general contractor's license renewed on time. I don't know. These are just examples of little glitches. So having a business advisor, in my opinion, really helps deal with some of the glitches. And it helps iron out some of those little misses that any entrepreneur can have. You coach, you work, you provide consultancy in the service-based world, and you have a huge focus in the green and the snow industry. I like to think of you as a legend in the snow industry. You've been there forever at CIMA, so that's amazing. But some of these little glitches, what do you find are some of the common glitches that contractors struggle with? And what do you put in place, or how do you help them iron those glitches out?
Sure. From a what are the glitches perspective, that I don't know that that's really as relevant as the second part of the answer, right? As to how do you work around or through them? A glitch, to your point, could be almost anything, right? And that the glitch sometimes depends on the person and the business and what it is they're good at or not good at, right? The way through those, right, in my opinion, are consistency of structure and consistency of process, right? So we talk a lot about standardization, standard structure, standard roles, standard role definition, standard responsibility that comes with roles, right? And then standard processes within the business that the individuals that fit those other criteria, right, of role and role responsibility follow, to take as much gray right out of the equation as we can, right? And that's not a person's expertise or knowledge or abilities, right? I see it to the contrary, right? And it gives them the ability to really truly use their wisdom, their knowledge, right, and their expertise to really help themselves and the business succeed for the client. Because if we take as many things as we can and define them by a standard and a standard operating process, then we can let the process handle those things, right? Those things become, quote, black and white. And then the stuff that falls in the gray are the exceptions, right? It's the stuff that we need individual knowledge and individual wisdom and individual expertise in order to really have an effective impact on. And that's where people can shine, right? And that's where people can give back to the organization, to the client, to the rest of the team, what it is they have to offer, as opposed to spending all their time and energy focused on all the rote stuff that could easily be handled by some volume of standardization, right, and process, right? I do a lot with software these days. It just kind of happened that way. Certainly didn't plan it. I'm not a techie guy most of the time. Ask my wife; she'll tell you. But I deal with all of my clients in some way, shape, or form. Right? We end up dealing with software, and and in recent past here, a great many of them have been involved in either helping them with implementing software or helping them use software post implementation to actually run the business, right, and get a return out of the investment. Everybody thinks software is the solution, right? The magic silver disc that solves everybody's problems. And, the reality at the end of the day is software doesn't solve anything, right? All it does is speed up the time in which we can effectively do something. Well, if we don't have standard process and we don't have a standard definition of the right outcome, all we do is speed up the errors that we're making and make them happen faster and probably in greater volume. And that's really the struggle that I have, right, as a coach and a business advisor with people. Everybody wants to talk about all the technical stuff. They want to learn how to push buttons. They want to learn how to get the output out of the system. And nobody wants to spend the time on the front end defining, what the definition of the right outcome is, and what the proposal document should look like, or what the concept of the estimating math should include in order to get an accurate estimate, right? They just presume, or want to believe that stuff just comes with the system, right? We don't have to put any thought and energy into that. And that couldn't be further from the truth, right? As I work with a client that's working through the start of an implementation of a software system, right, I tell them all the time, listen, we should have started talking 6 months ago, right? We should have spent the last 6 months defining your process, defining the role structure of your organization, defining the org structure of your organization, understanding who's going to do what within the system, without the system, right? How they're going to interact, what information needs to be provided, what information is already provided, before we ever start talking about system mechanics, right? Because that's third or fourth or maybe even lower on the list of things that are of importance when you really start talking about a wholesale system implementation that's going to help you run a better business.
I love your answer, and I feel like there's like 11 podcasts baked into that, from structure to processes to the. I actually wrote this down. I may use this later on. The magic silver disc that solves all our problems. I'm actually going to steal that from this call. Like, don't go trademark that, because I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I love what you're sharing there.
From a mentor of mine, so it's free license.
Okay, there you go. So now we know that's out on the table. That's free.
The problem we have in today's context is 5 years from now, nobody's going to know what a silver disc even is. They're not going to get the analogy.
Dang it!
Right? We have a guy on our team that still says, "Hey."
I tell people now, click on that little icon that looks like a Rolodex card.
I was just going to say.
I know it's a Rolodex card.
I was just talking to a colleague of ours, and he sends over like, "Hey, this is a reference." He's like, "Hey, put this in your Rolodex." And I was talking to him, and I said, "You realize you're the only guy I know that is still referencing a Rolodex?" And he started laughing, and I'm like, "I actually know what that is, though. I remember having one at the house, when I was younger." Yeah, no, it's great.
Listen, I still have one of those books that you put business cards in.
Yeah.
Okay, I carry it in my truck. I still collect.
Yeah, I still got
business cards.
Too.
So I got a question for you. You are big in the snow industry as a consultant. By the way, I think you're a great consultant. I think if anybody's looking for consultancy and they're in green, they're in snow, whatever, reach out to David. Absolutely fabulous, amazing entrepreneur. And just from the intelligence that he shared with us in the first couple of minutes of this show, absolutely fantastic. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I've got to give a shout out to our sponsors, which give you a time to think about it. But this is one of the biggest questions, one of the biggest things that I see, in the snow industry continually. I think it ties into systems, processes, what's going on in the field. And here's what it is. This is the second year in a row where snowfall has been less than desirable, right? And one of the things that I think about the snow industry and in being a service provider for 20 years is snow resets itself. So I'm just going to set the table with that. Contractors get in, contractors get out because of the fluctuations in weather patterns. This is very similar to what I experienced in 2009 and 10 with a lull in service in the areas where I service. And the big difference is I see a lot of guys today, a lot of contractors are pushing towards the big loader. And, you get a big loader out on the site, and, it's a big Cat machine. We love Cat. We love John Deere, all of those machines, but you get a big $250,000 piece of equipment. Now I get it. You're going to buy the piece of equipment and you're going to hold it for 3 years, and then you're going to, sell it, and you may make a profit on it from what you sold it for, depending on the year or the time or what's going on. Or you may, maybe you sell it for 30%. So maybe you figure you only use 30% of it, whatever it is, you've got some there, but you're sitting in a 20-inch market and you buy a $250,000 piece of equipment and you put a $40,000 attachment on it. A lot of times I'm wondering, how does that pencil profit-wise? Is that the best business decision? And I see a lot of guys struggling with it. And a lot of guys that I talk to in the snow industry become so overburdened with their equipment, with their expenses, trying to pay off what they have. And then they have a low snow year and they end up going out of business. And this is something that I see continually. So that's the question. How do you coach on that? What's your advice? I got to give a shout out to our sponsor real quick. I want to thank Western Snowplows for sponsoring the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. We love Western Snowplows. We use Western on our equipment today. Thank you very much for sponsoring our show, and we believe it's the best product on the market. And a shout out to Frost Cameras. Thank you, Frost Cameras. We love the ability to put Frost cameras on our sites for snow and ice removal, and we love the fact that they help us reduce slip and falls in the field. David, back to the question. Does that resonate with you at all? How does that fit into your coaching? Do you ever come across this?
Sure, absolutely. And I go, back a number. Well, I guess it's number of decades almost at this point. I worked for an organization that was one of the first snow-only national footprint providers, back in the early 2000s. And, we worked through some of these equations, and our problem was actually the opposite, right? We had 3 years in a row of twice our seasonal average snowfalls, right? Which is just as painful, maybe even more painful in some regards. Because of some of the things we tried to do at that time to mitigate the risk of the other, right? The low snowfall year, right? And we pushed hard on the context of fixed price seasonal contracts, right? We were probably one of the largest fixed price contract holders in the country by volume of dollars at the time. And it did the exact opposite, right? It killed our cash flow, and almost put us out of business, right? To the point where the business ended up being sold to another party in order to salvage what was there and continue on in some form or fashion, right? And we weren't even buying a lot of iron. We were buying attachments, not loaders, right? We were pulling in subcontract loaders. So I think, from the math perspective, number one, right, when I look at pricing snow services, I'm a huge advocate of what I call the balanced portfolio, right? And I don't want to see any one organization, almost regardless of their market, have more than 50 to 60% of the total average annual revenue stream in a fixed price contract, right? Now, that challenge has been mitigated in the current world because people have done a lot of work at, selling seasonals with a floor cap type scenario, right? Where if it snows under X, I give customer rebate. If it snows over Y, the customer pays me additional money, right? And I think that's a great model, and I think that everybody, right, should focus some type of energy and exercise on learning how to sell it and deliver it from a value proposition standpoint and such, right? Because the reality at the end of the day is moving snow as a service business is essentially providing an insurance policy to the client, right? And it's been a really long time since there's any insurance brokerage or business that's gone out of business, right, for any reason whatsoever. And the last thing that an insurance company wants, right, is for people to use the service they're paying for, right? They don't want to pay out for accidents or liabilities. It's painful to them, right? And if it happens, right, they raise your rates in order to cover the differences over some period of time, right? And I think that for a long time, that was a foreign concept to those in the snow industry, right? And that mindset started to shift, probably in the late 2000s, mid 2000s, late 2000s, and we're to the point now where that concept is far more commonplace, both in recognition by the buyer and in understanding and approach by those of us that are selling it, right? So, I think if you could balance that portfolio to have enough fixed income, right, kind of regardless of what happens in the winter, regardless of the amount of snow that falls, right, which is a requirement, because to your point, there's requirements of rolling assets, right? And rolling assets, they certainly haven't gotten any cheaper, right? And they're not gonna anytime in the near future. A equivalent 2.5-yard loader today, to your point, at 250 grand, right? As little as 30 years ago was a $50,000 machine, right? And you had to work hard to spend 50 grand on a machine of the same size at that time, right? So I think you got to be aware of what it is you're pricing to the client and how, right? And how that has an impact on your ability to perform or deliver service long-term, right? Because listen, we all talk about how clients are just looking for the best price, or they're just looking for the next quote unquote sucker provider in order to deliver them service. But the reality is that's not true, right? They don't want to change providers any more than we want them to, right? It's
Right.
just as painful to them as it is to us. Somebody's got to learn their wants, their needs, their desires, right? Someone's got to understand how to communicate. Somebody's got to understand how not to miss that loading dock that the other guy missed every time, no matter how many times we talk about it until the last year, right? And if that guy goes out of business, now I got to train somebody else, right? And that's painful. It's expensive, right? I'd argue that, turning over providers for our customers is almost as expensive as it is for us to turn over employees,
Yeah.
right?
It's got a huge cost.
Depending on the metrics you read, that's anywhere from 8 to 10 times their annual salary every time you turn one over, right?
Yeah.
So just think about that in context of are paying us to deliver service or contractors to deliver service. So I think that number one, I think there's ways to do it smart, right? I think there's ways to do it to understand how, if you're going to have a model or you're going to turn over newer equipment on a regular basis to the example you outlined, right? There's got to be a way for you to recover that from a revenue perspective, almost regardless of what happens from a snowfall perspective, regardless of what Mother Nature, right, either burdens us with or blesses us with, depending on which side of the coin you're looking at that from. And the other side of that coin for the contractor is they really need to understand what their cost structure is, right? When we talk about standardization of structure and process, right, a primary component of that, from my perspective, is making sure that an organization has a financial plan in place, right? They understand what their cost structure is. They understand how that relates to an annualized budget. They understand how that relates to a sales goal necessary to drive a particular revenue stream beyond whatever their recurring revenue stream is, right? They've got a formal process in place to review existing clients and existing profitability to make sure that doesn't slip, right? It's easy to get in the mindset of, I can't raise their prices because I can't afford to lose anybody. Well, you also can't afford not to raise their prices because all of your prices have gone up and you don't have any ability to negotiate most of that either, right?
Right.
If COVID taught us nothing else, I hope that it taught us, the majority of us anyway, that, right? Nobody ever would have believed that we would have seen anywhere from a 15 to a 30% increase in the cost of goods purchased in order to deliver the services that we deliver, right?
Absolutely.
And we went through that for at least 2 years in a row. And in some cases still are seeing those increases depending on what it is you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, just go to the grocery store. A block of cheese is like $15, man.
Sure.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. A question, Dave. I mean, obviously you're working with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of different business owners, you mentioned employees, and, we were talking before the call. My background is mostly in the franchise space, and I love where you are with systems and SOPs, because technology is great, but if we don't have the backing and the context of what this is going to deliver, then again, what does it matter? But I guess in terms of that turnover, for a client and then for that contractor who's looking to keep that client on board, we're mostly in that recurring revenue space in service. And what are those areas today? Because, costs are changing, the employees, obviously it's always, could potentially be high turnover. What are those areas you're seeing with your clients and in just the business over the decades? What does the client expect? And how do we deliver that incredible customer experience to keep them coming back to us outside of just the price?
Sure. And I think some of that's driven, by the example even that Dave gave, right? The drive towards loaders and iron, right, in the snow removal market today, I think really comes from the fact that the customers expect us to be able to deliver similar qualities of service to what they've come to expect over the years, right, at not necessarily a lower cost point year over year, right, but at an effective cost rate for them that doesn't have dramatic swings year over year, right? And the best way to do that is to find efficiencies, right? Now, when it comes to things that you deliver with rote labor, right, the guy in the shovel or the guy in the mower, there's only so many things that you can do in order to gain efficiency there, right? It's only marginally improvable, But when you add something like a 3-yard wheel loader with a 15 to 18 foot metal press, right, or Western wing plow that's convertible, right? Well, now I can take a piece of equipment that's, we'll just assume Dave's math's accurate, right? $250 for the loader, $40,000 for the pusher, right? And I can do the work of 10, 15 trucks with that machine, right? And we pencil out the math on trucks these days. Well, trucks aren't any cheaper either, right? You're not going to pay half for a truck what you're paying for a loader, but it's better than a third, right? You're talking 70, 80 grand, even for a low end truck in a lot of cases, particularly till you put a Western snowplow on the front of it, right? And you're not just going to put a Western straight blade on it, right? Nobody buys those anymore, right? They're going to put a V plow or a wide out on it or something, and you're going to have $10,000 or $15,000 invested in a plow, right? And a salter. And I got to put an operator in it, right? And operators don't work for $10 an hour anymore, right? They can go to McDonald's and make twice that tomorrow, right? So when we start looking at the math and we start looking at how we deliver those consistent experiences, we've got to be able to take advantage of the technologies that are growing rapidly in our space in order to find efficiencies to deliver the same or better level of service at a competitive price point for the client, right? And for ourselves, right, in a way that we can do so without having to exponentially grow our team, right? To your point, labor resources are nowhere near what they used to be, right? 30 years ago, 40 years ago, okay, fine, we'll just go hire another 10 guys, right? Or another 10 gals. There's not 10 people to be had today.
Right.
Right. So we've got to figure out how we can do more with less, more work with less people, more work with less pieces, right? And that means in some cases, bigger pieces are certainly more efficient and more effective pieces. Right. And that was the premise of our model back in the late 90s, when I worked in the national space, providing to large corporate clients, right? We were one of the first organizations to wholesale use pushers on the fronts of loaders, right? Back in those days, people were still moving most of the snow in the country with trucks and plows, right? And in those days, most of it was with straight blades, right? The V plow had barely taken hold back in those days. And I think that was the start, right? And to where we are today, back then a $2,500 pusher was, you're crazy. Why would you spend that money, right? Now we got guys spending 40, 50 grand on big wing metal pluses or Daniels or Westerns or whatever, and putting them on the front of a loader.
Yeah.
Because they can do more with less and they can get better results.
Yeah, and there's a wide variation in equipment from buying Kubota to John Deere to Hyundai to Cat, So,
sure.
Maybe you can spend $100,000 on a non-Cat driven or non-John Deere machine, but you've still got expense, and then you've got reliability and breakdowns and longevity and resale. I mean, there's a million things that go into that. But I think what I love about what you're saying here is that, before I go to what I love about what you're saying, who is the ideal client for you when you're looking at clients and you're thinking, who do I want to work with? Who's best for me? Because I think the information that you've provided today is invaluable. I mean, I've got half a page of notes of just like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Oh yeah, that's cool. Like, I've learned things today from you. So who is your ideal client?
Sure. So that's a great question, right? And I think the answer to that is, number one, somebody that's coachable and really willing to listen, right? I meet with a lot of business owners or business leaders, right, who are, quote, looking for a consultant to help them solve this thing, right? And I don't want to solve this thing, right? I want to be able to form a relationship with a client, to learn their business, to learn their team, to understand their business model, and to really have a wholesale ability to help them big picture, right? Not with this little individual thing, right? I said a while ago, I've come to do quite a bit with software, right? And the reality at the end of the day is I never had any intention of that. And I think to some degree, it's good and been good for me, certainly. But to some degree, right, it can be a distraction too, because it really makes us focus or gets us focused on this thing, right? And sometimes we lose sight of the ability to focus on the big picture and make sure we can truly have a real impact on the business, right? I don't operate on an hourly rate, right? I don't keep track of minutes of phone calls and emails sent and hours on Zoom calls or Teams meetings, right? I don't want to do any of that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a consultant, right? No offense to the attorneys and consultants in the audience. I want to be able to make it as much of a back and forth relationship as possible, where the business owner or leader feels like they can email me or pick up the phone and call me at any point at any time throughout our relationship and beyond, right? And get the help that they're looking for, that they need, right? That can really have a substantial impact on their business, right? I'm not a quick fixer, right? I'm not a Band-Aid station, right? I want to work with people over the long term. Our standard agreement or engagement is a 1-year period of time, because the majority of the stuff that we help people with is more about behavior change than it is about fixing this problem. And behavior change takes time, right? There is nobody can argue that point, right? Try to quit smoking, right? Try to go to the gym regularly, right? Try to change your diet. Try to teach your
Okay,
kids
you're
to
hitting a
clean
lot
their
of
room.
points that are really ringing true here, Dave. I don't know that I like where this call is going. The gym, the diet, smoking.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. I think it's time to have a drink behind that bar.
This is water, I swear.
I guess you are a few hours ahead of us on that side, but no, I love that. I mean,
Still the middle of a Tuesday.
no, I love that. I mean, the big takeaways. I mean, there's a lot, as Dave said, but it's just the consistency. I think that's the delivery of service. I think that's what a client wants is that consistency for the long term. And I love that mindset of long term relationship, because whether it's your client or it's the clients that those listeners out there who are running these service based businesses, typically, right? It's for that long term sustainability. So that structure, that process is. I love the SOPs. Laying that foundation. And so those are some of the key takeaways I think that our listeners, and I know I have taken away from this call, is consistency. That's the word. Yeah, consistency is awesome. Dave, as we bring this thing in for landing one, I just want to say thank you so much for the time that you've shared with us. This has been a fabulous call. I feel like there's so much to unpack just in what you've shared today. What's one thing that you would leave with our listeners today? What's one thing that's top of mind, or maybe one thing you've noticed in the industry that, hey, beware or watch out? I mean, we didn't even get to talk about AI or any of the things there, but what would you leave our listeners with today?
So I'd say, don't be afraid to ask for help, number one, right? But number two, be cautious of how much help you ask for, and not how much in volume of help, but how many different perspectives, right, you engage with as an individual business, right? Networking is great. Peer groups are great. I'm not trying to take anything away from those things, right? But I meet with these business owners who, I've worked with, and they rattle off 15 different consultants in the course of the last 20 years, and I sit there and I scratch my head and I go, what have you taken from any of that engagement, right? It's the same context as the guy that says, look at all this data we collect. And then I go, great. What do you use it for? Nothing. But man, do we have a lot of data, right? Well, opinions are great, right? Perspective and a help is great. But I do believe there's such a thing as too many perspectives, particularly when most business owners that I meet are not very great at distilling things down to the granular point and implementing, right? They're dreamers. They're big picture people. And the more dreams and big picture ideas they get in their brain, the harder it is for them to put any of it into practice and actually put rubber to the road.
That's awesome. Less is more. Quality is critical.
Simpler is always better.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great piece of advice, and I really think that it's not the flavor of the month when it comes to a coach. Right. I do believe that. Like, you need consistency, you need processes, you need to work through, things that your business is struggling with. And I believe that every business needs a coach. I believe that every business owner, every team should have some kind of coach, somebody who is, not looking through the same lens that you are, somebody that can look from the outside in, can help with directions, to help answer those questions, and sometimes just someone to bounce stuff off of. You may know the right thing to do. You just need someone to share it with who isn't biased by payroll or, all of the things going on in their life. This has been a fabulous call. Listen, if you are looking for a business coach, and I strongly encourage you to do so as an entrepreneur, reach out to David Gallagher, principal of Spiritus Business Advisors. You can Google that. I'm sure Ralph can throw the information into the chat. Sure. But reach out to Dave. Great leader, great consultancy that he offers, and you can hear just from the call we've had today a wealth of information, a wealth of process, and I love the fact that it's a 1-year program. So do yourself a favor, get in touch with David today. This has been absolutely fantastic call. Listen, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Dave Westcott. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Facebook. And Dave Gallagher is also on LinkedIn. So give him a shout. Give him a follow. You can reach out to him there as well. David Gallagher, Gallagher. Reach out. And listen, follow me on all of those social channels. And we are here every single Tuesday, 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, same time every single week. This has been absolutely fabulous. Todd, any last words to close us out?
Just be consistent and get a coach.
Be consistent and get a coach. David, any final words?
Thank you. I really appreciate the invite. That half an hour didn't seem near long enough, as is typically the case. So
no, it
we
didn't.
need to figure out a time to do this again.
I know
That's
it felt like 5 minutes.
It was fast.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
the passion, Dave.
Have a fantastic day.
Have a great
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.